Welcome all. This is the first module in our series on sustaining your coalition roadmap for success. And this one's about partnerships, and really everything builds on partnerships. The success of your coalition is going to be because of your partnerships. Moving on to the next slide here. So our goals today are really to learn why partnerships are critical, and then go beyond that, and not just knowing why they're critical, but learning how to evaluate who you have and involve them in the evaluation partnership. Involve your partners in evaluating themselves, really, because they know more about what they can do than you do inherently. And then after we talk about figuring out who you have, and you always want to focus on who you have first. You know, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush kind of thing. We'll move on talking about potential partners and recruiting them. And then we're going to talk a lot about tools. And I really want your feedback. I want to hear your suggestions. You know, we really want to create a learning community so that people will learn from each other. And because that's our goal, we don't have all the answers or even many of them. So moving on to the next slide. Brief review of what sustainability is. And in the end, what it comes down to is your work is too important to stop when a grant is over or when something is over. Our communities desperately need the work you're doing. I think we all see that pretty clearly, or we wouldn't be involved. You know, our communities, our children, our neighbors, just everyone in our communities can improve their health and improve their life in meaningful ways. And for that, I want to commend y'all for all your hard work, my involvement. I've heard a lot of great programs, and they're not just coming out of one coalition, they're coming from everybody. Next slide, we're looking at why sustainability. On this slide, I want to highlight culturally appropriate. It's especially important in our region, and it's the first one on the right column. It's too often people overlook and they think what works in DC suburbs is going to work here. Well, maybe not. Some things really do need to change if you're working with folks, like recipes. You know, some of these recipe guides we get and cookbooks we see for healthy cooking are great, but if nobody is willing to eat them, it doesn't matter how healthy it is. So, you know, look at changing. Here in the mountains, it's soup beans. You know, if you can figure out how to help people make soup beans healthier with a little less lard and whatnot, and a little less bacon fat or whatever, then that's going to actually improve their diet from a health standpoint, rather than just telling them to eat raw kale. Moving on to the next slide. So what gets sustained? We've got several different things here, and the key thing that gets sustained is partnerships sustain activities. As you can see, you know, partnerships with healthcare organizations sustain some activities. The one to highlight is with the local extension office. I think just about everybody's worked with their local extension office because they make great partners. My experience in Virginia and Kentucky is that they're willing to work with you, and oftentimes they have access to resources you simply don't, or they have ways of doing things, you know, for healthy eating programs in particular, and some of the exercise. County officials and whatnot, we'll talk about that a little more on the next module next month. But if you want to sustain changes to the built environment, you got to have whoever owns that land on board. Next, partnership. This is just next. We're starting with a slide that says partnerships. Why? I really like this quote from Catherine Mickens. And it's part of a case study. It's from a case study that she generously wrote up for us to help us learn from each other that it's from that case study. And we're going to review that case study later, but the part where we say the body has many parts which work together to get the job done, so does our coalition. That's it in a nutshell. That's partnerships. On to the next slide. We got a little graphic of a meeting table. And like I said, partnerships are a lot of times how we get things done, because together we're a lot stronger than the sum of our individual parts. So let's go on to the next slide and look at questions for your team members of who is involved. That's the first thing we want to figure out, one of the early things. Figure out who we have involved. And the email that hopefully y'all received, if you didn't, just let me or Regina or Sharon know, has this next graphic that's let's take a look at your team, has it on a worksheet along with all of these categories written out. And what we encourage you to do is to take these worksheets and print them out, take them to your coalition meetings or with a small group and fill them out, and make a dash for each one. It'll give you a real visual sense of who you have and who you don't. And then you'll move on to the next step of considering who you need. But first you got to know who you have. And really, working with a small group is a great way to do this. The one thing is, small group, it needs to be absolutely confidential. You need to be able to share some things that aren't always positive with each other. So our evaluators, moving on to the next slide, taking a look at your team, our evaluators and others have identified 11 critical categories, and that's the categories you see on that graphic and you see in the worksheet. And so we have 11 categories, and then we have other, or 10 categories and others. So you can fill in your own. You can put somebody in more than one category if they have a strong representation in both categories. Everybody is a concerned citizen in a way, but do they have should they all be counted in that? Maybe not, probably not. So we're just going to look through. A lot of these are self-explanatory. A lot of these coalitions are pretty strong in by nature. So again, highlighted the extension service earlier. I'm just thumbing on to the next tab, or the next slide. So each one of these brings something usually very different to the table. Moving on to the next slide that has churches and ministers, law enforcement, corrections officers, businesses, and workplaces. Each of these has some real value to the point that we've identified our faith-based health ministry program linkages. That, from what I've seen, has accomplished an amazing amount that wouldn't necessarily be accomplished otherwise, of getting people healthier, getting people moving, eating healthier, and bringing it into the churches as a great, just really a great way to get people involved. Law enforcement, corrections. Well, corrections officers have a captive audience of people that need to make a life change. And oftentimes, I know that is one of the categories that everybody in our experience is the weakest on. But you might consider some prison outreach or, jail outreach, because there's a group of people there who need to make some real lifestyle changes, and many of them recognize it. And a lot of those changes also involve health. Businesses, workplaces. Businesses, a lot of large businesses will do health fairs, will do events. I worked for Lowe's for a while. They do contractor events. Go set up a table. It's a great way to reach out. Also, businesses want their employees to be healthier because it's good business. It lowers their healthcare costs. It lowers their sick leave time. It increases worker productivity. Just from a very dollars and cents perspective, they want healthy people. And most businesses hopefully care about their employees and just want them healthier as people. So reach out to those large businesses and small businesses. Reach out to chambers of commerce and talk about health. Again, oftentimes you have a somewhat captive audience, and it can be a good way to reach out to a lot of people. Government elected officials, we'll talk about, on to the next slide, we'll talk about them a lot more on our next webinar on March 25th. Others, we know not everybody drops into an easy category, so here's the catch-all, and fill out those others. Be specific when you fill these out. Fill out their for others. Clearly identify the category. As you fill these out, really identify, who the organization is, who the person is. Be specific so that somebody else can pick up this information and go forward with it. So it's not just your mental notes. Questions for your team members. We created a team member, a partner information worksheet. And a lot of that is on this. Of these questions, the one to focus on is, why are they involved? People do things for reasons. We want to make sure we're meeting the needs of our partners. That's just part of being a good partner, the two-way street of the partnership. So really looking at why they are involved. What do they need out of the relationship? What are the outcomes? And that, being upfront about that, will really help keep the partnership going in the long run. You also want to look at some of the other things I've mentioned here. I'm trying not to go through and read every slide. For those of you thumbing through, we're on questions for your team members, and now we're moving to the slide, let's enhance your team. So let's enhance your team. Again, concentrate on who you have already. But then we want to step back also and say, well, who is missing? Of these questions, the most important are, who do we need involved? Who do you need involved to get something done that you're trying to do, or to sustain your coalition? Sometimes we want to stop and step back and figure out before we get into a critical situation who would help us avoid that, or what kind of partner would help us avoid that. So, and then again, why would they want to be involved? Appeal to that. Be plain and simple about appealing to it, and be honest with them in mentioning it. We think you'd like this because ... Give them some outcomes. Have the partnership have value for them, not just the coalition. So moving on just a little bit. And I realize I'm going a little fast. Partly I want to make sure we have a lot of time for questions, because this is really about your questions and helping y'all. Enhancing your team also should look at diversity. Think about who you have. One area that people or coalitions tend to be weak on is age. Most of the folks involved are older, especially those as citizen involvement. That just is the way it is, who has time to participate. But you want to get some younger folks involved too, both for different perspectives, and they're the leaders of the future. That's one of the great challenges of sustainability, is developing who the coalition leaders 3 years from now are going to be, and making sure that the organization, using the age and other factors as a way of making sure the organization outlasts the involvement of one person. Economics class is another one. If you're very modest income, that presents some different challenges, especially in terms of what you can afford diet-wise and others, than if you're not. Just think about those things. Non-traditional partners is one area where you can really get a lot done in some interesting ways. One complaint that a lot of rural communities have is the lack of sidewalks, and it makes things difficult to get out there, and you don't want to walk along the road when you're going to get run over. It's just the way it is. But transportation departments, if you can get them involved, they're the ones who built the sidewalks, who maintain them often. So there's a way of working with non-traditional partners that is going to yield real results. And think about that as you go through. A lot of times non-traditional partners may start out as a way of getting a specific project done, but then you use that to get them involved. I really want to thank Catherine Mickens, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, as well as Janice Hopkins and Brenda Johnson for helping with some case studies to give real-world examples and some things I hadn't thought of in doing this, but giving us real-world examples of success and things that work. And later on, we're going to invite you to contribute a tool of your own. So I just like this quote that we're like family and we agree to disagree. That again becomes a very important part. You got to have trust. You got to have respect. As she says, the welfare of the community is too important. So, and that's why most of us are there, or all of us are there. For those going by phone, that was the first lessons from case studies slide. We're moving on to the second one. Communication between members and partners is a must. Communication has to be a two-way street. It shouldn't just be a water hose. It needs to go both ways. You need to be talking with each other. You really need to focus on communication, and that'll help us avoid problems. Take care of little things before they get to be big things. So little problems before they get to be big problems. So we're going to move on to the Winston County, Mississippi case study. And the folks in Winston County have been, one of their particular strengths has been on a regional approach, and they've developed some real partnerships with regional state level that has, including the state university there, a state university, and that has both given them funding as well as given them some strong institutional home, and has really been one of their strengths. Some of the other things about support. Letters of support. We're going to talk more about those as part of our next module, but those are a great way of engaging each other. They're a great way of engaging other organizations. And, going to politicians or other organizations and you're just asking for a letter. The easy thing to do is go with the letter already written. And then you can start the relationship and make the introductions. Education is the single biggest predictor of health on a population level. That's what I've been told before and seen before. So, it makes sense to be involved in health programs. I wouldn't have thought of it necessarily, but it's also a way of strengthening relationships within the community. Sometimes you've got to be a non-traditional partner too. Elected officials we've mentioned. Regina's doing some great webinars on social media and media. I will point out that the CDC has a great media guide. I was thinking I was going to need to write one because I was a newspaper photographer for 10 years and involved in a lot of different media and journalism, and most media guides miss the point. This one is so good, I don't think I could write it better, and I was really pleasantly surprised. Strongly encourage y'all, if you're interested in developing media relations, to read it, and we're going to have it as a link on our website at some point soon. Now we're moving on to tools for strengthening partnerships. So And I'll go through each one of these for a bit. Consistent communication. You know, we can't stress this one enough. There's a reason it's the top tool. And one of these, also, people have different communication styles, and this can highlight the need for a leadership team, because you want people who are comfortable talking with different people. Some people are quiet and in the back. You need to make sure you're getting feedback from everybody. It's easy for those of us who are used to being the loudest, one of the loud voices in the room, to make sure we're heard, but that you don't want to alienate anybody. You want their ideas to be involved, and their ideas and their involvement will strengthen the coalition. So stop sometimes and make sure you're getting feedback from everybody. And if you're not, think about it. And that's where having different people in your leadership team who have maybe that quieter communication style have the conversations. And on to the next one. Listening. A partnership is exactly that. This isn't a command control type thing. So you need to listen, and you need to give people recognition for their contributions. We may not be able to give them money or anything like that, but we can give them a good pat on the back. That warm, fuzzy feel good is, and giving them recognition and stopping to say thank you for their involvement. And then saying, you know, how can I help you? I found that in fundraising to be one of the most powerful things I did for strengthening fundraising partnerships, is asking donors, hey, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Besides saying thank you, which everybody likes to hear, but stopping and saying, what can I do for you? Moving on to engagement. And this again is part of the partner information worksheet, is a line on there. Do you have a plan for engaging each partner? Tailor it to them. Each partner has individual needs and goals of why they're involved. So sit down with the small group and come up with a plan for strengthening that partnership, and that will help your coalition tremendously. And it's one of the real keys to going from where you are to where you need to be. We do have one assignment we would like you to do. And as you saw with the case studies, we would like you to go in and describe one tool that has worked for you. Part of what we're trying to develop, strengthen partnership, we're trying to really help build a community where people can give each other the answers and help each other get through the challenges that everybody faces, especially in trying to be a sustainable coalition. But also sometimes those are just the challenges in running programs. We want you to share something. Go into as much detail as you can. Please email them to Regina, and we're going to share these with everybody. So, if you need to take out confidential information or anything, please do. So, starting to wrap up besides that assignment, and we really hope you'll take a time, even if it's just 2 paragraphs or if it's 2 pages. Questions. If you have questions, please send your questions and suggestions to me, that's my email address, or to Sharon, whom most of you know, or everybody knows Sharon. So, if you have questions outside of these modules too, we're here to work with you on helping your coalition be sustainable. We also want to get better at doing these presentations and meeting your needs. This isn't about hearing myself talk. This is about helping you be more successful and helping you strengthen your coalition so that, again, we keep up the great work y'all are doing, because our communities, our neighbors, the children in our schools and your own children, and they're too important to let this go by the wayside. Their health is too important, and their well-being is too important. So if you have questions, if you need resources, stop and ask me, please. please ask Sharon. If you have suggestions, please give them to us. Just one other note, Regina mentioned it, you'll be emailed a survey within 1 to 2 weeks. These are reviewed by Ohio University, who is our program evaluator. They're also reviewed by the CDC, who provided this wonderful grant. It would really help us if you fill those out. That just shows how important this training is to you. And I'm moving on to the very last slide. So hopefully, yeah, we'll still have plenty of time for questions. Really want questions, feedback, conversation. The next one's going to be about political support. Partners from the beginning talk about engaging politicians. We're going to have a couple of case studies. I know one is hopefully going to come from a recent experience in Frankfurt that was one of our coalition members had that was great. I can also have stories about some of my own experiences working with politicians and local government and trying to get some things done. So we'll give you some important tips and tricks for that. With that, I hope you all enjoyed it. Please, what's your questions?
Okay, this is Regina. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the lines to everybody. So again, if you are listening to both your computer and on the telephone, could you please keep yours deleted, or not deleted, I apologize, muted. And Stuart, if you wouldn't mind to kind of talk about the assignment a little bit more so that they are aware of what is going on.
Sure, let me jump back to that real quick. And that's also mentioned in one of the worksheets. All right. Well, to err is, there we are. I was thinking to err is human, but to really screw up, you need a computer. Much like the case studies, which I believe y'all were emailed, or just tell us a story about one of the tools you've used, one of the things you've done that has helped. Either it can be what something has worked well, or it's just as important to learn from what hasn't worked well and learn maybe what to help each other avoid mistakes and those kind of challenges. Just email it, a Word document, a simple email to Regina would be great. Please be aware we're going to share these with everybody. So if you're concerned that it still has some personal information in it, let us know, and we can take those. If you want that kind of taken out, we'll proofread it and try to make it less identifiable. Okay. What questions do y'all have? What suggestions? What does
this assignment do?
We'd appreciate it if it was done in the next 2 weeks or so.
Okay.
So again, we're going to put them on our Facebook page, share them through our Facebook page, as well as we're still creating some other resources for sharing things. And then I should mention also that all of this is going to go in the end in a giant toolkit that we're going to give you come, is it next May, at our big wrap-up convention.
Yes, that's what it's looking like. Stuart, can Brenda and Janice are on the line with us. Can we kind of hear some of their case studies, what their successes or their lessons learned were? Would you guys care to expand upon that?
You put us on the spot.
I'm sorry.
One thing we've done, we received a grant, maybe it will be 3 years. We started a farmers market. This will be our 3rd year, starting June. And we usually do it June through October. That has been very successful. Brenda? I guess Brenda's gone. And working with the churches has been successful. We're working with 10 churches. And we basically, and I was going to write about that as part of my assignment. I usually get people that are go-getters in their church and that are responsible. And that seems to work well. Carolyn? Ditto. Okay. And I
Carolyn,
guess
one of
we
the
could speak
people
on the people that we have part of our partnership. We have most of those people that are included. We have 3 elected officials on the board, and we do have some people that are missing, so we know who they are. So we'll work to make sure we have those included.
And sometimes if you can't get them actively involved, saying, can I send you our meeting minutes and put you in our newsletter list, and things like that, put them in the conversation loop, can go a long way too. And you may find you do that, and then once every 3 or 4 months you hear from them chime in on something particularly important, or when they know maybe a funding opportunity that comes up, or something particular. So think about that. They don't have to attend every meeting. It's great if they do, but other ways of getting everybody the information out is usually the most important thing, and giving people some feeling of tie to the organization. So much of what we do is about how we feel about it, not is what counts, and our inner emotions relating to something.
Okay.
Stuart, this is Sharon. I'd like to just add a couple comments. The community team, the wheel that you have in the PowerPoint presentation is really a good tool, I think. One of the things that I have found is really important in terms of membership of any health coalition are people who are affected by that particular health issue or a family member. So people with type 2 diabetes or family members, they have a passion for it that's a little bit different, and that passion is sustained more easily because they have seen some of the consequences or problems and how it's affected their family. And so they are the folks that will kind of stick with the whole health issue a little bit longer. So, not everybody's interested in that, but occasionally you'll run into people who are real passionate to change themselves and can even move that into the community. So it'd be nice to get referrals from doctors or health providers of people that they think might, be able to participate.
Yeah, that's one area where finding out why they're involved, if you
Uh-huh.
can, it doesn't always need to be public. By the way, I want to take a minute to give Andrew with Apophil credit for creating this. I did not create it. Andrew did. It came out really nice, and I know Mandy was heavily involved in creating it too, and giving a lot of input and direction and what it needed to look like so people can use it successfully. But back to your point, yeah, that's why finding out who's involved, and oftentimes what I've seen is you can go to them and say, well, what do you need? Some of the programs in Russell County came out of that directly, as people saying, well, I want to know how to make healthier meals. A program coming up in Russell County, Virginia came directly out of those conversations and was changed because of those conversations. I mentioned recipes. Well, that was one aspect that is going to be changed directly to meet local cultural needs and be culturally appropriate based upon conversations of people who have type 2 diabetes and in the community. So they can be a great resource, and I think you do find most of your concerned citizens are folks who are affected by type 2 diabetes directly.
Another thing that I think coalitions can potentially do. Not everybody can be involved in regular meetings with a coalition, but I think that it's appropriate to take a few members of the coalition to that person, go to their office and meet with them, or go to lunch and meet with them, and discuss, some strategies or something. A lot of the information you were just sharing, what they need from us and what we're planning to do and how they could be involved or help. And sometimes we need to take the mountain, to the person and not always wait for them to come to a meeting because they just may not be able to do that. And yet we can still get those folks involved and get their support. And I think that I see some of the counties doing that, and I think that we need to consider that in many of our other coalitions and counties.
Yeah, and that can be particularly a tool when working with politicians, that,
Yes,
taking
perfect example.
time. I know Barbie and I talked the other day, and that was a big part of what she was able to do with was 10, 15 minutes or meeting that I think one of them turned into an hour because they were so interested and so involved. But uh, yeah, sometimes you got to take the mountain to them, and that's just how it is. If you need somebody who's very busy or you can't make it out, I think we also have to recognize there's we don't want people who have physical challenges of getting out. If we can still get them involved, that's great. So maybe they can't drive to the meeting. Maybe the meeting has to drive to them. So not just people who are busy or perceived as powerful or that, but also think about those who may be homebound for other reasons.
This is Cheryl from Winston County. As you presented, let's enhance our team. You mentioned diversity, and here in our community, our coalition is primarily African American. But as I thought about it, something that Sharon just mentioned, we can get on the agenda for the Rotary, the Chamber of Commerce, and that would involve the majority population here, the Board of Supervisors, and that could help us to enhance diversity, racial diversity on our coalition. So I think I will take that back to our meeting.
Great. They can also sometimes provide powerful letters of support. Having a Chamber of Commerce involved can give you access to business leaders, but also, if the Chamber of Commerce is supporting what you're doing, and it can really be part of a diverse group of letters of support. I will tell you my experience, when you're going after grant funding, those letters of support matter. Sometimes they're more important than anything else. In one very large grant I was able to help secure, we had 30 letters of support from everybody from U.S. senators to local business owners, and that made the difference. Was with USDA Rural Development. So, showing that broad base of support, get out, and that's where going through these and kind of thinking about actively analyzing who do we have and who do we need, and trying to do it with a little more dispassionate sense. Not just them, and we always want to consider them as people, but also consider what do they bring to the table, what perspectives. And diversity really is about bringing different perspectives to the table. It's economic, it's race, it's life experience. It's a whole bunch of different things. And the goal is to become stronger from those different perspectives, to combine the different perspectives and different access to resources to make it, again, better. The sum should be better. The whole should be better than the sum of its parts. So Rotary also often sometimes gives grants, and they might be somebody to look at partnering that way.
Stuart, this is Mandy, and just sort of banking off what you all talked about just now, and thinking about when you do reach out to prospective individuals to be partners of the coalition, most of them can't come to the meetings or won't come to the meetings, people that can be involved in what you're doing. And it probably would be good to think about 25% of people are your regular attendees, and 75% of the people that you're trying to attract are your worker bees or involved in some capacity. And that capacity is going back to the philosophy of APAFIL of time, talent, and treasure. And having a list of things when you go visit or talk to individuals, having a list of things that you can approach them about being involved in a way that doesn't commit more of the time that they might have available, and looking at what their skill set might be. If you're approaching a politician, it would be different than approaching a public health official or professional. So having a few things on the list to say, we want you involved and this is all we need, or here's the things that we need and here are the ways you can contribute to this list, and not always set the expectation to be at the meetings.
Yeah, that is often done in some organizations for those who do professional services, saying, would you be willing to volunteer some marketing help every now and again, or if we get in a real jam, would you be willing to step in? You don't have to be at every meeting, but maybe every 6 months or so. So yeah, that's why you got to take the mountain to them. You got to go to them on their terms and engage them, and then you can build the relationship. But yeah, time is valuable. Talent is one of those things that we do not want to overlook and underestimate. Oftentimes, 20 minutes of the right person doing the right thing is more valuable. Well, in some cases, I've seen it be more valuable than 6 months of other people working full time. So, yeah, think about, and if you go and ask somebody for something very specific related to their skill set, they get why you're there. They see why you're asking them, oh, I'm the expert in this field. So, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, Mandy.
I had a question. It's Ellen Kumler. I'm just getting started with the coalition building, and I'm curious about how do you, encroach on people's time? How do you prepare yourself and let them know, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, can I have a meeting with you for 10 minutes? How do you even start that conversation? Any thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of times you want to look at so much of this, you want to look at who knows them, who can go to them with who's one of their peers who can go to them and say, I think you should meet with so-and-so, or, I'd appreciate it if you'd take a few minutes to meet with you. That's going to give you instant credibility, just like if one of your own friends says, hey, you'd really like what so-and-so's doing. Okay, there's instant credibility there. And sometimes you just got to cold call them. Sometimes you just got to, and I recommend more calling them when you can, or things and say, can I come meet with you for 10 minutes? We're doing this. I know you're involved. Do your homework, though. Show up and you want to be respectful of their time in the sense that you're showing up with something targeted to them.
And Ellen, I would also add to that, this is Mandy, is finding common ground. I do a lot of community building and connecting people for various reasons, and it's hard to get in the door, whether it's fundraising, whether you're trying to get in the door to have them involved in an activity. Find that common ground. Find where the passion connects, where they may be involved in something or they're offering a service, and you find that the connector to create a dialogue to open that door. And it might be you have a copy of a brochure of someone's and you find in their brochure where their mission is the same as yours, or it might be another health provider. It might be someone who has a program that is similar to yours, and it's not necessarily diabetes related, but it's related to chronic disease, or it's related to lifestyle change. Find that common connector and that common ground, and that makes it a whole lot easier to open the door and connect with those partners.
Great, thank you.
This is Carolyn from Weston County. When we first started, we got letters of support, and one of the organizations that we teamed with was NAACP. And being members of the NAACP, we attend supervisors meetings, alderman meetings, school board meetings. So we have already established relationship with people in key places. So what we can do now is meet with the mayor, ask to be on the alderman board, meet with the supervisor, ask to meet with the supervisors, and same thing with the school board. So it means being involved, first of all, with different entities in the community, and then it's easier to reach out to them and ask for their support.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments on that, Carolyn. This is Sharon. we forget sometimes that the members that are on our coalition are deeply involved in other organizations, and they already have relationships with key people in the community. That's just an excellent point. And so that assists the coalition in actually being able to move forward more quickly. It's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
One thing to comment on what Dr. Kilmer said, one of the most important questions I found in doing interviews and trying to find sources for things is, as you interview somebody towards the end or you talk with somebody towards the end, saying, who else should I talk to about this? Who else do you think would be interested in this? What other things should I ask you about? Or do you know anything else that might be helpful to what we're trying to do? And if they give you names, I go on to them and I say, so-and-so said you would be interested in this. Again, you've got instant credibility because it's somebody they know. You've got a little bit of credibility. They're less likely to hang up on you. And I found those to be one of the most, that kind of open-ended question of what else should we be doing, no, etc., to be one of the most important questions that I ever asked in these conversations.